Have you ever felt completely, absolutely outgunned? I mean, really, truly out of your depth? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to dive into one of the most incredible, high-stakes military standoffs in all of ancient history, the war with the Philistines. We are going back to a moment of total crisis, a situation where the survival of an entire people hung by literally the thinnest of threads. What we're unpacking today is the ultimate underdog story. It's a massive clash between a deeply entrenched, technologically advanced military empire and, well, a terrified population of farmers. To put this into perspective, the sheer scale of this mismatch is just unbelievable. On one side, you have an invading force rolling in with 30,000 chariots. 30,000! And on the other, the defending army possesses exactly 0 swords among its regular ranks. None. No swords, no spears. It's an asymmetrical nightmare that honestly looks mathematically impossible to survive. It's the perfect case study in what happens when a technologically superior force corners a completely unequipped population. So, to understand how a nation gets backed into this kind of corner, we really have to look at the spark that ignited the whole powder keg. All right, Section 1, the spark of war and Jonathan's strike at Geba. So our source text tells us that King Saul, having reigned for 2 years over Israel, makes a definitive military move. He chooses a standing force of just 3,000 men. 2,000 of them are stationed with him in Michmash and Mount Bethel, and the remaining 1,000 are placed under the command of his son, Jonathan, over in Gibeah. And the rest of the nation? He just sends them home to their tents. So it's a tiny, heavily calculated defensive posture. But, as you'll see, it doesn't stay defensive for long. Because here is where everything absolutely escalates. Jonathan takes his men and actually smites the Philistine garrison stationed in Geba. This targeted attack acts as a massive catalyst, and the Philistines hear about it immediately. In response, Saul blows the trumpet throughout all the land, basically sounding the alarm, telling the Hebrews to hear what just happened. The text uses a really powerful word here. It says Israel suddenly became an abomination to the Philistines. The fragile peace is totally shattered, and the ultimate superpower of the region is now wide awake. The lines are drawn, and the people are urgently called together to join Saul at Gilgal. Which brings us to Section 2, a nation in hiding and the overwhelming retaliation. You don't just strike an empire without facing some massive blowback. The Philistines mobilize a force that is just staggering. 30,000 chariots, 6,000 horsemen, and an infantry force that the text actually describes as being like the sand on the seashore in multitude. Just an incredibly massive, heavily armored force that marches right up and pitches their camp in Michmash. And the resulting psychological terror for the Israelites? It's absolute. Facing total annihilation, they completely abandon their posts. They are so distressed, they hide in caves, in thickets, rocks, high places, even in pits. Some are so terrified they actually abandon the region entirely, fleeing eastward over the Jordan River to the land of Gad and Gilead. As for Saul, he's still holding out at Gilgal, but the text emphasizes that the few people who did actually stay with him, they were following him trembling. Moving right along to Section 3, the cost of panic and a ticking clock at Gilgal. Now, Saul is operating under a very strict set of instructions here. He was given an appointed time, exactly 7 days, to wait for the arrival of the prophet Samuel. Imagine the agonizing suspense as this timeline plays out. Day after day passes. The troops are terrified. And as the days tick by, fear completely takes over, and Saul's men literally begin deserting him. It's a masterclass in the immense pressure of leadership, right? What do you do when the clock is running out and your support is melting away right in front of your eyes? Finally, day 7 arrives. The set time expires, and Samuel is still nowhere to be found. Seeing his army scattering, and knowing full well that this massive Philistine force is gathering at Michmash, Saul decides to take matters into his own hands. He says, "Bring hither a burnt offering to me and peace offerings." Out of pure, absolute strategic desperation, he forces himself to perform the unlawful sacrifice, basically attempting to secure some kind of divine favor before every single one of his soldiers abandons him. But, and you can't make this up, as soon as he finishes making the offering, Samuel arrives. Saul desperately tries to justify his actions. He points to the scattering troops. He points to Samuel's delay, the looming Philistine threat, claiming he basically forced himself to do it. But Samuel's response is devastatingly absolute. "Thou hast done foolishly." Because Saul failed to keep the commandment, Samuel declares that his kingdom shall not continue. It's a really harsh reminder for anyone in a leadership crisis. Compromising your core principles out of pure panic, it ultimately costs you your authority, and for Saul, it cost him his kingdom. The immediate fallout of this panic is just devastating. Samuel packs up and leaves, going up from Gilgal to Gibeah. Saul then actually numbers the people still present with him. Out of his original 3,000 chosen men, guess how many are left? About 600. 600 trembling men left to face an army of 30,000 chariots.
That leads us right into Section 4, an army without weapons, and the blacksmith ban. While Saul and his tiny remnant of 600 guys hunker down in Gibeah, the Philistines completely capitalize on Israel's paralysis. They send spoilers, basically raiding parties, straight out of their camp in Michmash. They split up into 3 companies, radiating outward to systematically ravage the land toward Ophrah, Beth Horon, and the Valley of Zeboim. But here's the thing, this isn't just about raiding for supplies. This is a highly calculated move to establish absolute economic dominance over the entire region.
Because the true depth of this crisis lies in a brilliant but incredibly cruel piece of economic warfare. The text states clearly, "Now there was no smith found throughout all the land of Israel." The Philistines had instituted a total, sweeping ban on blacksmiths, and their reasoning was explicit and brutally effective, lest the Hebrews make them swords or spears. They had completely stripped Israel of its ability to manufacture or even repair weapons of war. This subjugation went all the way down to the basic agricultural level. Imagine the dark irony here. If an Israelite farmer needed to sharpen his plowshare, his axe, or his mattock, he couldn't do it himself. Now, they did have a file for basic touch-ups, but for real sharpening, they had to physically walk down into the enemy's camp, hand them money, and politely ask the Philistines to sharpen their farming tools. It was total economic suppression, perfectly designed to keep a population completely defenseless and entirely reliant on their oppressors. And so, when the day of battle finally rolls around, we are looking at an astonishing reality. King Saul and his son Jonathan, they are literally the only 2 men in the entire Israelite camp who actually possess a sword or a spear. The remaining 600 soldiers are completely unarmed, probably just clutching the very farming tools they just paid their enemies to sharpen.
All of this sets the stage for an impossible standoff. The massive, heavily armed garrison of the Philistines advances. They move out to the passage of Michmash, bearing down on a terrified, fractured, and totally unarmed remnant of just 600 men. So what does this all mean? When you are outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and completely stripped of your ability to fight back, how in the world does a nation of farmers defeat an empire of iron? It's a massive cliffhanger that challenges literally everything we know about strategy and warfare and leaves us so eager to dig into what happens next in the historical record. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll catch you on the next one.